everyone, Hamer back again with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 3, Episode 15, which is called The System. So Jim gets his instructions at a doctor's office. The mission is to get enough evidence to convict mob boss Constantine Victor, known as Mr. V, by turning his trusted lieutenant, Johnny Costa, who runs a gambling operation for him. Off the IMF goes to Costa's casino, where we see Jim as a high roller winning big at the craps table, getting the attention of the pit bosses as well as Costa. Jim is brought to Costa's office, where he's confronted about his loaded dice. Jim says his name is Vince Mason, and he came to sell Costa some important information. Mason is a mob hitman, and he was offered a contract to kill Costa, but he turned it down. However, he tells Costa he knows the face of the guy who took the job. Costa is incredulous, saying no one would dare touch him, but Jim says he'll reconsider soon. Costa places a call to Mr. V, which the IMF is able to intercept, and Rollin, as one of Mr. V's assistants, tells him that there haven't been any contracts put out, and that an accountant named Anderson is being sent to the casino for auditing purposes, no big deal, and Costa should let him see everything, which worries Costa. Willie rigs up a bunch of wires in the IMF's room for later. Cinnamon starts losing at blackjack and asks for credit. One of the bosses tells her to wait in the bar for Costa, who offers to give her $500 in casino credit when she says she's a system player. Using the note, Rollin is able to duplicate Costa's signature on a check. Barney goes through some of the air vents to get towards the casino's vault as Costa and his lieutenants do the nightly money count. The money is put into the vault safe, and Costa checks a floor pressure alarm on his way out. Barney uses the awesome reverse ratchety screwdriver to open the vent grate, and then uses a long apparatus with a claw and a microphone, sort of like how they did in the Diamond, to get at the safe and open it. Barney gets the sack of money from the safe and adds some more to it, and then puts it back. Meanwhile, Jim and Rollin record some audio with Mr. V's voice for later. Rollin arrives as Anderson, the accountant, who says that he's here to implement Mr. V's new system, to which Costa shows some uneasiness and resistance. They begin by reviewing last night's count, which shows as $25,000 heavy, giving Costa some serious umbrage at the implication that he's not being honest with the organization. Rollin says he'll give Costa some time to figure out what the story is. Costa calls Jim to his office and tells him that he wants him to stick around to point out the potential hitman, as he's starting to believe the story. Cinnamon arrives and asks Costa to okay a check for $250, which he does under Rollin's watchful eye. By the time Cinnamon gets to the window to cash it, the amount has suddenly become $25,000. The cashier double checks with Costa because of the amount, and he nods, none the wiser. Cinnamon heads to the blackjack table, slipping the dealer a note with Costa's signature to pay her out $30,000 by stacking the deck, which he does. Willie arrives and Jim fingers him as the hitman. Willie leads them down to a basement where he previously opened a window, leading Costa to believe that he bailed away. Returning to the office, Costa finds Rollin there with the dealer and cashier demanding answers about why Costa was so generous to Cinnamon, showing him his signatures on the papers. Costa insists it's all a setup. Rollin leaves to make a call, ostensibly to New York, and Costa's lieutenants follow him. One of them, Arnie, listens to the call and is told by Mr. V's pre-recorded voice that Costa is out and Anderson gives orders. Then Arnie will be in charge. Costa confronts Cinnamon, who tells him she was sent by Mr. V so the hit on Johnny could be justified. Willie shows up and Cinnamon presses a button that sets off preset IMF squibs as Costa jumps out the window and heads to the vault, stuffing the cash into a briefcase. Costa calls Mr. V from his office instead of through the usual payphone back and forth. Mr. V denies putting a hit out just as Rollin and Willie enter the room. Rollin tells Mr. V that he'll take care of things and he's got it under control, and they take Costa out. They allow Costa to elude them within the casino, and Costa runs back into the vault and locks himself in, setting off the alarm and tells Rollin he'll see Mr. V in court. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of C. There are some good things about it, as there are with just about all episodes, with a few exceptions. The sequence where Barney cracks the safe is fantastic. From using the awesome reverse ratchety screwdriver, which everybody knows I love, to, using that claw and the whole sequence, it's got like the tense music going on with it and everything. Really, really, really well done. I also like the fact that the writers added a little bit of realism to this episode. Rollin has to practice Costa's voice and his signature. He doesn't just kind of get it down pat, the way you would expect. It's kind of weird how he gets Mr. V's voice just kind of automatically, but after listening to a few recordings, but whatever. It's a good plot. I like the plot. It makes sense. It's a cogent story, and it's not difficult to follow. So from that standpoint, I like it. There's not a lot of padding or plotting, which is also good. And definitely there's some good teamwork by all 5 team members. Um, so it can be considered a Power 5 episode in that regard. What's not so good? James Patterson as Costa is a real downer. I just find from his mannerisms, I don't know how to say it without sounding kind of mean. Just his mannerisms and speech patterns and that sort of thing, it almost seems kind of lackadaisical. Like he almost kind of doesn't even want to be there. His delivery, unfortunately, is just so flat. And this is an episode that really depends and revolves around the Costa character. He's what drives this episode, because this is a plot where the IMF has engineered circumstances and is walking their mark through those circumstances to get to their desired goal. And the performance is just really lacking there. One of the reasons I think that it really hurts this episode, I can't help it, I can't really get past it. Some of you may know that this episode was actually remade as part of the revival in 1988. And the plot is virtually the same. There's very, very little difference. But in the 1988 episode, an actor named James Sloyan, who is also very, very fine actor, I really like him, his portrayal of Johnny Costa is just so much better. He's so much more lively. He looks like he belongs in that setting. And unfortunately, James Patterson just does not. And I can't help watching, obviously I can't unsee the revival episode. And I just can't help thinking, man, there's this somewhere between something and so much lacking in this episode of what could have been if we just had a more lively performance by Patterson. The other thing I will say about that is that I don't know whether this was deliberate or how exactly it was staged. At the end of the episode, once Costa believes that he's being targeted, he just kind of turns from this unflappably stoic guy who shows very little emotion. He just becomes almost like a blubbering shell when he's talking to Mr. V. And I'm not sure whether that's designed to just show that, okay, a contrast in persona where basically now he's changed, and that was deliberate, or whether at that point Patterson is overacting or whatever. But it really kind of doesn't work for me. Like, that's not how I would expect Costa to behave. I would expect him to kind of lash out in anger a little bit, but to almost seem like he's on the border of tears. Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. I really don't know what else to say about it. And again, in the shadow of the remake, it's a real big problem. Anyway, but enough said for this episode. Thank you for watching. As always, please like this episode. Please subscribe to my channel, and please leave your comments. I very much look forward to them. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.